Okay, let's dive into this because I am absolutely thrilled to share today's explainer with you. So when you close your eyes and picture a samurai, what pops into your head? Right. You probably imagine this incredibly stoic, noble warrior. They're standing perfectly still in a gentle breeze, cherry blossoms falling around them, their armor is completely spotless, and their sword is just this pristine, gleaming extension of their honor. It's a gorgeous, totally cinematic image that pop culture has basically hardwired into our brains. But what if I told you that being a historical samurai was actually way less like starring in a glorious epic and, well, a whole lot more like being trapped in the world's absolute worst gig economy job? Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack Oliver's fascinating, hilarious, and honestly deeply uncomfortable analysis titled, "Being a Samurai Sucks, Actually."
So think about the Hollywood samurai for a second. It's all about profound poetry, unyielding honor, pristine estates, and romantic duels in the moonlight, right? Well, scratch that. Oliver's core thesis completely shatters that image. He argues that when you actually strip away centuries of myth-making, the historical reality of the samurai was just a brutal, miserable, physically agonizing daily grind. I mean, it really wasn't about looking cool at all. It was about surviving insanely harsh conditions, all while working for bosses who demanded quite literally everything from you.
Section 1. The concept, de-romanticizing history. We're taking a massive step back from the myths, the legends, and those beautiful ink-wash paintings, and we're looking at the harsh, unvarnished truth. Because, it's super easy to look back at history with rose-tinted glasses. But sometimes actually understanding the past means acknowledging that it was often just really, really uncomfortable. Oliver frames this whole analysis as a sort of spiritual successor to the wildly popular sieging castles sucks actually concept. And if you're familiar with that style, you know exactly what we're doing here today. We're applying this cynical, highly analytical, and frankly darkly comedic lens to a historical subject that we normally treat with absolute reverence. We're talking logistics, day-to-day misery, and the fundamental realities that the movies always just conveniently leave out.
Section 2. Compensation. The minimum wage warriors.
Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how it forces us to reframe our thinking. To truly get this, I want you to stop thinking of a samurai as a mythological hero and start thinking of them as a desperate applicant reading a modern job listing. And where does literally every job listing start? Compensation. Think about a modern minimum wage job. Sure, the pay isn't great, but you generally get to go home to a warm bed, maybe grab a burger, and you have, basic legal rights. The samurai gig? Yeah, not so much. Your primary compensation was often just a specific measure of rice, known as a koku. Out on campaign, your daily provisions were these meager, totally uninspiring rations of dried grains and just whatever you could forage. And daily perks? Forget about it. There were none. You were actually expected to maintain your own incredibly expensive armor and weapons on a salary that basically made them nothing more than historical minimum wage workers. Just, carrying very sharp swords. Oliver captures this perfectly with this absolutely brilliant term from the source material, Mindesloan Kriegers, which translates to minimum wage warriors. The dark comedy here lands so incredibly well because it totally shatters our illusions. Just imagine it. Imagine training your entire life, mastering complex martial arts, and literally risking dismemberment on a random Tuesday, all for the historical equivalent of barely making rent. Fighting for a miserable wage isn't some modern invention. It was the foundational, everyday reality for the vast majority of these legendary warriors.
Section 3. Working conditions. Workplace hygiene. So put yourself in their shoes for a second. Or, well, actually, their straw sandals. You're wearing layered, heavy, incredibly restrictive armor made of iron, leather, and silk lacing. Got it? Okay, now march in that armor through the pouring rain, through knee-deep mud, right in the middle of the sweltering heat of a Japanese summer. You are sweating profusely, and guess what? There are no showers. There is absolutely zero sanitation on a military campaign. You were sleeping in the dirt alongside thousands of other unwashed humans and horses. I mean, the chafing alone would be enough to completely break a modern person's spirit. The sheer physical discomfort, the rampant disease, the unbelievable grime, it was a deeply, deeply unglamorous daily reality.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how easily we can view this history through a modern corporate metaphor. Because, let's be real, if a samurai were to file an HR report today, it would trigger an immediate shutdown. Toxic work environment doesn't even begin to cover it. We're talking extreme occupational hazards, zero safety regulations, mandatory overtime in the form of standing guard in the freezing rain, and hygiene standards that would have OSHA shutting down the entire shogunate by lunchtime.
Section 4. Termination policies and the concept of seppuku.
Unfortunately for our minimum wage warriors, complaining to HR wasn't exactly an option. Pop culture loves to tell us that seppuku, ritual suicide, was this act of profound, transcendental honor. But looking at it through Oliver's darkly comedic lens, we have to define it a bit differently. Seppuku wasn't just about honor. It was the ultimate toxic non-compete clause. It was literally the most terrifying, extreme corporate loyalty program ever invented by an employer. You didn't just get fired or, get asked to clear out your desk. If you failed your lord, or even if your lord simply decided it was time for you to go, your severance package was being ordered to literally end your own life just to prove your dedication to the company.
When we bring all of Oliver's stylistic choices together here, the utter absurdity of this historical arrangement becomes stark, and honestly, darkly hilarious. Just look at this combination of concepts. The bosses were expecting ultimate, fatal corporate loyalty from mindless lone Kriegern, minimum wage warriors. They were asking for the ultimate sacrifice, the literal giving of one's life in the most agonizing way imaginable, from staff they were basically barely paying in rice. It is, without a doubt, the absolute pinnacle of a one-sided labor contract.
Which brings us to the end of our historical job orientation. We've stripped away the cherry blossoms and the shiny swords. We've looked at the terrible pay, the horrifying hygiene, and the fatal termination policies. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. Knowing the brutal, uncomfortable reality of what it actually meant to be a samurai, if this job were offered to you today, would you still accept it? It really makes you wonder why we continue to romanticize such terrible historical working conditions, doesn't it? Thank you so much for exploring this incredibly fun and insightful explainer with me today.